Hello, my friend. Welcome to Cabin Sleep Tales. I'm truly happy that you've chosen to spend this quiet moment with me. No matter where you are in the world, no matter how busy, stressful, or exhausting your day may have been, tonight is different. Tonight is for slowing down. Tonight is for letting go. So before we begin our story, take a deep, slow breath in and gently let it out. Feel your shoulders become softer. Allow your hands to rest comfortably. Let your jaw relax. There is absolutely nothing you need to do right now. No emails to answer, no phone calls to make, no deadlines waiting for you. For the next little while, the outside world can wait. Tonight, you are safe, you are warm, and you are exactly where you need to be. As you continue listening, you may notice your breathing becoming slower, your thoughts becoming quieter, and your body feeling just a little heavier with each passing moment. Imagine a gentle winter evening. Fresh snow quietly falling from the dark sky. A soft breeze moving through tall pine trees. The comforting smell of cedar wood drifting through the air. Far away, an owl softly calls into the peaceful night. Nearby, a warm fireplace gently crackles inside an old wooden home. Golden light dances across the walls. Everything feels calm. Everything feels peaceful. This is your place tonight. A place where there are no worries, no rush, no expectations. Only comfort, only warmth, only peace. As our story unfolds, you don't need to imagine every detail perfectly. Simply allow the words to gently carry you wherever your mind wishes to go. If your thoughts begin to wander, that's perfectly okay. Simply follow the sound of my voice once again. Like gentle footsteps through fresh snow. Slow, quiet, peaceful. Tonight's story is called The House That Borrowed the Stars. High in the snowy mountains of Wyoming, hidden deep among ancient pine forests, there stood a small wooden house that appeared on no map. Very few travelers ever found it, and those who did always remembered one remarkable thing. Every single night, the stars above that little house seemed brighter than anywhere else in the world. Some believed it was only a trick of the mountain air. Others whispered that the old house somehow borrowed the stars themselves. And as the first snow of winter slowly covered the quiet valley, one traveler decided to discover the truth. So, get comfortable. Close your eyes if you haven't already. Take one final, slow, peaceful breath. And together, let's begin. The traveler stood silently at the edge of the narrow mountain path. Before him, the small wooden house rested beneath a blanket of fresh snow. Warm golden light glowed through its windows. It was the only light for miles. Above the cabin, the stars shimmered with an unusual brightness. They seemed impossibly close, almost as if the night sky had gently lowered itself over the roof. The traveler had crossed many mountains before. He had slept beneath countless skies, but he had never seen anything quite like this. Every instinct told him to continue walking, yet something softer, something quieter, invited him to stay. He stepped toward the old porch. The wooden boards gave a gentle creak beneath his boots. Not the sound of age, but the sound of a home that welcomed every careful step. He raised his hand and knocked softly. Once, twice. The door slowly opened. Standing there was an elderly woman with silver hair gathered into a loose braid. Her eyes were kind, calm, almost as peaceful as the night itself. She smiled gently. "I've been expecting you," she whispered. The traveler blinked. "We've never met." The woman simply nodded. "Not yet." She stepped aside. "Please, come inside. The mountain grows colder after midnight." Warm air wrapped around him the moment he entered. The comforting scent of cedar wood filled the room. A stone fireplace glowed quietly. A kettle rested nearby, gently singing as steam rose into the cozy room. Everything felt strangely familiar, as though he had once dreamed about this place, long before he ever found it. The traveler slowly removed his heavy coat. The old woman gently hung it beside the fireplace. Without saying another word, she poured a cup of warm herbal tea into a small porcelain mug. The steam curled softly into the air. It carried the comforting scent of pine needles, wild honey, and something he couldn't quite recognize. He wrapped his cold hands around the warm cup. Almost instantly, the chill of the mountain seemed to melt away. For several quiet moments, neither of them spoke. The only sounds were the gentle crackling of the fire, the soft rain tapping against the windows, and the slow ticking of an old wooden clock resting on the shelf. Finally, the traveler looked toward the window. The The stars, he whispered. I've never seen them shine like this. The old woman smiled. They're happy tonight. The traveler chuckled softly. I didn't know stars could be happy. She looked into the fire before answering. Most people don't. They spend their lives looking down. They forget to look up. Outside, the clouds slowly drifted apart. Hundreds, no, thousands of tiny stars filled the sky. Their reflections shimmered across the frozen lake beyond the cabin. The traveler couldn't look away. It felt as though the night itself was breathing. Slowly, peacefully, as if the mountains, the trees, the lake, and the stars all shared the same quiet heartbeat. The old woman stood and walked toward a weathered bookshelf. She carefully removed a small leather-bound journal. Its pages had grown golden with age. She placed it gently on the table. This house, she whispered, has been keeping stories for more than 100 years. Each traveler who found this place left behind one memory, one wish, or one dream. She slowly opened the journal. Its pages were filled with beautiful handwriting, some neat, some hurried, some faded almost beyond recognition. Each page carried the quiet voice of someone who had once sat exactly where the traveler sat now. He reached out carefully. His fingers rested lightly upon the first page, and as he began to read, the room seemed to grow even quieter, as though the cabin itself was listening. The traveler slowly turned the first page. The paper felt delicate beneath his fingertips. Its edges had grown soft with time, touched by countless winters that had quietly passed through the little mountain house. At the very top of the page, only one sentence had been written. I arrived here with nothing but the clothes I was wearing. There was no signature, no date, only those simple words. The traveler read them once, then again. For reasons he couldn't explain, they lingered in his heart. He gently turned the page. The handwriting continued. It spoke of a young carpenter who had wandered into the mountains many decades earlier. He had been searching for work, searching for purpose, searching for a place that finally felt like home. Instead, he had found this quiet cabin. The journal described the same warm fire, the same wooden rocking chair, the same peaceful silence that filled the room tonight. Even the old clock, it had been ticking beside the fireplace all those years ago. The traveler slowly looked around. Nothing seemed to have changed. It was as though time itself had chosen to rest inside these walls. Outside, fresh snow continued to fall without a sound. Each tiny snowflake drifted gently through the moonlight before settling softly upon the frozen ground. The old woman quietly refilled his cup with warm tea. She smiled kindly. This house remembers everyone who has ever found it. The traveler looked up. How can a house remember? She softly touched the wooden table. Wood remembers. Stone remembers. And sometimes so do quiet places. The traveler listened carefully. The cabin felt wonderfully still. The fire glowed gently. The rain had almost stopped. Only the whisper of the wind moved through the tall pine trees outside. Then, very softly, he heard something. Not a voice, not footsteps, almost like distant laughter carried gently through the forest. He looked toward the window. Nothing was there, only endless snow, towering pine trees, and thousands of brilliant stars watching peacefully above. The old woman smiled again. They're only the memories. They visit from time to time. They never stay for long. The traveler felt no fear, only curiosity, and for the first time in many years, a quiet sense of wonder slowly returned to his heart. The traveler leaned back in the old wooden chair. The warmth of the fire wrapped gently around him. For a long while, he simply listened. The quiet crackling of burning cedar, the soft whisper of the wind beyond the cabin walls. And somewhere in the distance, a tiny stream continued its endless journey beneath the snow. The old woman carefully closed the journal. "There is something I'd like to show you," she said softly. She picked up a small brass lantern resting beside the fireplace. Its glass had become slightly cloudy with age, yet the little flame inside burned with a calm, steady glow. Without another word, she opened the front door. Cool mountain air quietly entered the cabin. The traveler followed her outside. Fresh snow covered every branch of the pine trees. The world seemed untouched, perfectly still, perfectly peaceful. They walked slowly across the quiet clearing. Each step left gentle footprints behind them. Above, the stars stretched endlessly across the winter sky. The traveler had never seen so many. Some sparkled brightly, others glowed softly, almost hidden among the darkness. The old woman raised the lantern just a little. "Every winter," she whispered, "I bring this lantern outside." The traveler looked at her with quiet curiosity. "Why?" She smiled. "So the stars know this house is still here." He couldn't help but smile. "Do you really believe they can see it?" The old woman looked toward the heavens. "I don't know, but I like to think that somewhere, someone who once stood here, someone who once felt warm beside this fire, might look down from the stars and know this little house is still waiting." A gentle breeze drifted through the trees. The lantern flame danced softly behind its glass, yet it never went out. For several peaceful minutes, neither of them spoke. They simply stood together beneath the endless sky, watching thousands of tiny lights shimmer above the silent mountains. The traveler felt something he hadn't felt in years. Not excitement, not surprise, but peace. A deep, quiet, unhurried peace, the kind that asks for nothing, the kind that gently reminds you that sometimes the most beautiful moments in life are the ones shared with silence. The old woman lowered the lantern. Its warm light rested quietly upon the snow. Then she looked toward the edge of the forest. "Come," she whispered. "There is one more place." The traveler followed without hesitation. A narrow path disappeared between the towering pines. Fresh snow softened every footstep. The forest welcomed them with silence. Not an empty silence, but one filled with gentle life. Branches sighed softly above them. The distant stream continued its quiet song beneath the frozen earth. Somewhere far away, an owl called once. Then the night became still again. After several peaceful minutes, the trees slowly opened into a small clearing. At its center stood an enormous pine tree, older than any tree the traveler had ever seen. Its branches stretched wide like open arms. Each limb carried fresh white snow that sparkled beneath the moonlight. The old woman gently placed her hand against its weathered trunk. "My father planted this tree," she said softly, "long before I was born." The traveler stepped closer. The bark felt rough beneath his fingertips, yet somehow it seemed warm. The old woman smiled. "They say every winter this old pine remembers every person who ever found peace beneath its branches." The traveler looked up. The tree reached so high, its top seemed to disappear into the stars. Tiny flakes of snow drifted slowly through the branches. Each one shimmered like a tiny crystal. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The traveler closed his eyes. He breathed in the cool mountain air, the scent of pine, fresh snow, and distant cedar smoke filled his lungs. Every slow breath seemed lighter than the one before. The worries he had carried through countless busy days slowly dissolved into the peaceful winter night. The old woman quietly spoke once more. "Life will always ask us to keep moving. There will always be another road, another responsibility, another tomorrow." She looked toward the quiet mountains. "But sometimes the greatest gift we can give ourselves is simply to stop, to breathe, and to remember that this moment, this single peaceful moment, is already enough." The traveler opened his eyes. Above the ancient pine, the stars continued shining, patient, silent, timeless. For the first time in many years, he felt no need to hurry home, because somehow, standing beneath that old tree, he already felt as though he had finally arrived. The old woman remained beside the ancient pine for a little while longer. Her hand rested gently upon its weathered bark. The lantern's warm glow spilled softly across the fresh snow. Neither of them felt the need to speak. The mountain had already said everything that words could not. A gentle breeze drifted through the clearing. The branches swayed almost imperceptibly. Snowflakes slipped from the needles, falling slowly like tiny stars returning to the earth. The traveler watched them in quiet wonder. Each one disappeared into the white blanket below without a sound. The old woman smiled. Nothing in nature ever rushes. The trees don't hurry. The snow doesn't hurry. Even the stars wait patiently for night. She looked toward him, and somehow everything arrives exactly when it should. The traveler lowered his gaze. Those simple words settled deeply within him. He realized how much of his life had been spent chasing tomorrow, always believing peace would come later, after one more journey, after one more success, after one more difficult season. But standing beneath the old pine, he discovered something unexpected. Peace had never been waiting somewhere else. It had always been hidden inside quiet moments, like this one. The old woman slowly lifted the lantern. "I think someone would like to meet you." The traveler looked around. "There is someone else here?" She nodded gently. "Not far." They left the clearing and followed another narrow trail. The trees grew closer together. Moonlight filtered softly through the branches. The snow reflected just enough light to guide their footsteps. Soon, the traveler heard a new sound. A slow, gentle flow of water. The hidden stream they had heard all evening finally appeared before them. It wasn't frozen. Crystal clear water moved quietly between smooth stones. Steam rose gently into the cold air. The traveler knelt beside it. He dipped his fingers into the water. It wasn't icy. It was surprisingly warm. He looked up in surprise. How is this possible? The old woman smiled knowingly. Some springs never freeze. They've been flowing beneath this mountain long before either of us was born. The traveler listened to the quiet melody of the stream. Every ripple, every tiny movement, every soft reflection of starlight seemed to carry its own peaceful story. For several long moments, they simply remained there, watching the water continue its endless journey, never rushing, never stopping, only flowing quietly through the heart of the mountain. The old woman waited quietly until the traveler stood once more. The lantern reflected gently upon the warmed stream. Its golden light danced beside the silver glow of the stars. For several peaceful moments, neither of them moved. The mountain itself seemed to be breathing, slowly, calmly, as though time had forgotten this little place. The traveler finally broke the silence. "I don't want to leave." The old woman smiled softly. "That feeling comes to everyone who finds this stream. But peace was never meant to stay in one place." She looked at the flowing water. "It was always meant to travel with you." The traveler watched the stream carefully. The water never fought the rocks. It simply flowed around them, patiently, quietly, without resistance. The old woman noticed his gaze. The stream teaches the oldest lesson of all. It never asks the mountain to move. It simply finds another way. The traveler slowly nodded. He understood. Some burdens were never meant to be defeated, only parried differently. A gentle snowfall returned. Tiny white flakes drifted through the moonlight. One landed softly upon the surface of the stream. Within seconds, it disappeared into the warm current, without struggle, without fear. The traveler smiled. "I think I'm beginning to understand." The old woman looked at him kindly. "The mountain hasn't changed you. It only reminded you of who you've always been." The traveler took one slow, deep breath. The crisp winter air filled his lungs. For the first time in countless years, his thoughts felt wonderfully quiet. Not empty, simply peaceful. Far above, the stars continued their silent journey across the endless sky. Below, the warm spring continued its own endless journey beneath the mountain. Above and below, everything moved in perfect harmony. The old woman gently lifted the lantern once again. "Come," she whispered. "There is one last place before dawn." The traveler followed without asking where they were going. Somehow, he no longer needed to know. For every path she had shown him tonight had already led him exactly where his heart needed to be. The old woman waited quietly until the traveler stood once again. She held the lantern close, its warm glow reflecting gently upon the flowing water. "There's something special about this stream," she whispered. "It has been here for longer than anyone remembers." The traveler looked into the clear water. The stars shimmered across its surface. It was impossible to tell where the sky ended and where the stream began. He watched tiny ripples carry the reflections downstream. Each star stretched into dancing ribbons of silver before quietly returning to its perfect shape. The old woman knelt beside the stream. She gently dipped her fingers into the warm water. When she lifted them, tiny droplets caught the moonlight. For just a moment, they sparkled like little diamonds. "My grandmother used to bring me here," she said softly. "She told me this stream carries away everything we no longer need." The traveler smiled gently. "Worries?" She nodded. "Worries, fear, loneliness, even regret." The traveler gazed thoughtfully into the flowing water. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then quietly, he picked up a small, smooth stone from the snowy bank. It fit perfectly in the palm of his hand. The old woman noticed. "Choose one thing," she whispered. "Only one. Something you've carried for far too long." The traveler closed his eyes. He thought about the endless rushing, the sleepless nights, the feeling that he always had to keep moving, always searching, always chasing something just beyond the next horizon. Without another word, he gently tossed the stone into the stream. It disappeared beneath the clear water with the softest little splash. Neither of them spoke. They simply watched the ripples slowly fade, until once again, the water became perfectly still. The old woman smiled. "You don't leave your worries behind in a single night, but every peaceful moment, it makes them a little lighter." The traveler nodded. For the first time, he truly understood. Peace wasn't something you found, it was something you practiced. One quiet breath, one gentle moment, one peaceful night at a time. Above them, a single shooting star slowly crossed the endless sky. Neither of them made a wish. Somehow, they already had everything they needed. The old woman led the traveler farther along the narrow forest trail. The lantern's golden light swayed gently with every step. Ahead, the trees slowly began to thin. The traveler noticed the eastern horizon, still dark, yet touched by the faintest hint of silver. "Dawn is coming," he whispered. The old woman nodded. "Yes, but the night still has one last gift." They climbed a gentle hill blanketed in untouched snow. Every footstep felt lighter than the last. When they reached the top, the traveler quietly stopped. Below them, the entire valley stretched into the distance. The little cabin rested beside the frozen lake. Its windows glowed with warm amber light. The hidden stream shimmered like a ribbon of silver. The ancient pine stood proudly above the forest. And beyond everything, the snow-covered mountains reached toward the fading stars. The traveler had never seen the world look so peaceful. It felt almost unreal. The old woman placed the lantern upon a smooth stone. Its gentle light joined the final glow of the night. "This," she whispered, "is where I come whenever I forget." The traveler looked at her. "You forget?" She laughed softly. "Everyone forgets, even those who know the way. Sometimes we become busy. Sometimes we become afraid. And sometimes we simply need someone to remind us to slow down." The traveler stood quietly beside her. Neither of them spoke. They simply watched the valley below. Slowly, very slowly, the first pale colors of dawn appeared beyond the distant mountains. Deep blue became soft violet. Violet slowly melted into silver. Then, A gentle blush of rose colored the eastern sky. The stars disappeared one by one, not because they were gone, but because the morning no longer needed their light. The traveler smiled. I thought sunrise would make the night disappear. The old woman gently shook her head. No, the night isn't ending. It's simply becoming morning. She looked toward him with warm, kind eyes. That's how healing works. It doesn't erase yesterday. It quietly becomes tomorrow. The traveler closed his eyes one final time. He breathed deeply. The scent of pine, fresh snow, warm cedar smoke from the little cabin below. Everything felt wonderfully familiar now. When he opened his eyes again, the first golden ray of sunlight touched the mountain peaks. The valley awakened slowly, without hurry, without noise, just as the old woman had always said life should. And somewhere deep within his heart, a quiet hope rose with the morning. The first sunlight slowly spread across the snowy valley. Golden light touched the cabin roof, then the frozen lake, then the towering pine trees standing quietly along the mountainside. The entire world seemed to awaken with perfect gentleness. No sudden sounds, no hurried movement, only the quiet arrival of a brand new day. The traveler stood silently. He had watched countless sunrises before, but never like this. This sunrise didn't feel like the beginning of another busy morning. It felt like forgiveness. The old woman carefully picked up the lantern. Its flame had grown smaller. The sunlight was now bright enough to guide their way. She smiled. The lantern has done its work. With great care, she gently blew out the tiny flame. A thin ribbon of smoke curled into the crisp morning air. The traveler watched it disappear. I thought we'd need it to walk back. The old woman looked toward the brightening forest. We only borrow light until we remember our own. The traveler quietly repeated those words. We only borrow light until we remember our own. Something about them settled deep inside him. They slowly began walking back toward the cabin. Morning birds had started singing softly among the pines. A red fox crossed the distant snowfield. It paused for only a moment, looked toward them with quiet curiosity, then disappeared peacefully into the forest. The traveler smiled. Everything seemed wonderfully alive, even the silence. As they reached the little wooden bridge crossing the warm stream, the traveler stopped one last time. He looked back toward the hill where they had watched the sunrise, toward the ancient pine, toward the hidden stream, toward the endless mountains. I'll remember this place forever, he whispered. The old woman nodded. You don't have to remember every detail. Just remember how your heart feels today. Whenever life becomes noisy again, close your eyes, breathe slowly, and this mountain will always find its way back to you. The traveler closed his eyes for one gentle breath. The sound of flowing water, the scent of cedar, the whisper of pine branches, the warmth of the little cabin, they all returned instantly. When he opened his eyes again, he smiled, not because everything in life had become perfect, but because he finally knew peace had never been lost. It had only been waiting, patiently, for him to become quiet enough to hear it again. The old woman quietly opened the cabin door. Warm air welcomed them home once again. The familiar scent of cedar wood, fresh bread, and gentle herbal tea filled the little room. The fire still burned softly inside the stone fireplace, almost as though it had been patiently waiting for their return. The traveler removed his boots. Tiny drops of melting snow slipped quietly onto the wooden floor. He smiled. Everything inside the cabin felt different now, not because the cabin had changed, but because he had. The old woman carefully placed the lantern back upon its old wooden shelf. Its little flame was gone now, yet somehow the room seemed brighter than before. She poured one final cup of warm tea. This time, neither of them needed words. They simply sat beside the fire, watching the orange flames slowly dance across the old stones. Minutes passed peacefully, perhaps longer. Time no longer seemed important. The traveler finally looked toward the old woman. "I think I understand now." She smiled gently. "What do you understand?" He looked into the fire before answering. "I spent so much of my life searching for somewhere peaceful, a better place, a quieter tomorrow." He shook his head softly. But peace was never hiding inside another place. It was hiding inside the way I looked at the world. The old woman nodded. "The mountain didn't give you peace. It only removed enough noise for you to hear it." Outside, morning sunlight slowly filled the valley. The snow sparkled like millions of tiny diamonds. Birds continued their gentle songs among the pines. The frozen lake reflected the bright blue winter sky. The traveler stood and walked toward the window. He rested one hand upon the cool glass. Everything looked exactly as it had yesterday. The same cabin, the same mountains, the same forest. Yet somehow, everything felt wonderfully new. He smiled quietly. "I think it's time for me to leave." The old woman stood beside him. "Yes, every traveler leaves, but no one ever truly loses this place." She opened the front door. The fresh morning air drifted gently inside. The traveler stepped onto the porch. Before walking away, he turned around one final time. The little cabin stood peacefully beneath the towering pines. Smoke curled gently from the chimney. Golden light glowed softly through the windows. It looked exactly as though it had stepped out of an old dream. The old woman waved gently. "No matter where life carries you, walk slowly, rest often, look up at the stars, and never forget. There will always be a warm light waiting for you somewhere." The traveler smiled, then quietly began walking down the snowy path. His footprints stretched toward the waking valley. The morning sun grew warmer with every step. And although the little cabin slowly disappeared behind the forest, the peace he had found there never disappeared at all. The traveler continued walking down the quiet mountain path. fresh snow softened every footstep. Behind him, the little cabin slowly disappeared among the towering pines. Yet somehow, he never felt as though he was leaving it behind. The warmth remained with him. Not in his hands, not in his coat, but quietly, inside his heart. Morning light filtered gently through the forest. Golden rays rested upon every snow-covered branch. Tiny crystals sparkled like countless little stars that had chosen to remain upon the earth. The traveler paused beside a small wooden fence. Beyond it, a family of deer quietly wandered across the snowy meadow. None of them seemed frightened. One young fawn lifted its head for only a moment. Its dark eyes met his. Then it peacefully returned to its mother. The traveler smiled. Nature never hurried. Every creature simply trusted the morning. He continued walking. The narrow trail slowly followed the gentle curve of the mountain. Soon, he reached a place where the trees opened once again. Before him stood an old wooden sign. Its letters had faded long ago. Only a few words could still be read. Walk gently. Leave quietly. Return whenever your heart grows heavy. The traveler rested his hand upon the weathered wood. Those simple words felt strangely familiar, almost as though they had always belonged to him. He looked back one final time. The cabin could no longer be seen. Only endless pine trees, soft morning mist, and the quiet mountain sky remained. Yet he knew, somewhere beyond those trees, the old woman would already be placing another log upon the fire, another kettle upon the stove, another lantern beside the door, waiting patiently for the next weary traveler who needed nothing more than one peaceful night beneath the borrowed stars. The traveler rested quietly beside the small window. Outside, the mountain village slept beneath a fresh blanket of snow. The world was still, the kind of stillness that did not feel empty, but comforting. A gentle fire continued glowing in the corner of the room. Its warm light moved softly across the wooden walls. The traveler watched the flames for a while. Each small movement reminded him of the old cabin hidden deep within the forest. The quiet mornings, the smell of fresh pine, the sound of the kettle warming beside the fire. He realized something. Some places are not meant to be owned. Some moments are not meant to be held forever. They are simply gifts given to us when we need them most. The traveler closed his eyes, and in his imagination, he returned once again to the little cabin among the trees. He saw the old wooden door, the glowing lantern, the peaceful forest surrounding it, and the old woman sitting beside the fireplace. She smiled gently, not with sadness, not with goodbye, but with the quiet understanding that every journey must continue. The traveler smiled back, because now he knew the cabin was never truly far away. It existed in every peaceful morning, every quiet snowfall, every moment when the world slowed down and allowed him to breathe. Days passed, then weeks. The traveler continued his journey through the mountains, but something inside him had changed. He no longer searched for a place to escape. He carried peace with him wherever he went. When he walked through busy towns, he remembered the silence of the forest. When life became difficult, he remembered the warmth of the fire. When the nights felt long, he remembered the lantern glowing beside the cabin door. And slowly, he began sharing that same kindness with others. A warm meal for a stranger, a gentle word for someone who was tired, a moment of patience when someone needed understanding. Because he had learned something from the mountains. Peace is not something we find once and keep forever. Peace is something we create again and again in the smallest moments. Many years later, the traveler returned to the mountains. The path was familiar. The tall pine trees still reached toward the sky. The snow still covered the quiet trails, and the wind still carried the same gentle song. He followed the old path, step by step, until he reached the place where the cabin had once stood. But when he arrived, the cabin was gone. Only a small wooden fence remained, and beside it, a single lantern rested beneath the trees. The traveler smiled. He understood. Some memories do not disappear. They simply become part of the world around us. He sat beneath the pine trees, listening to the peaceful sounds of nature, the distant river, the whispering branches, the soft falling snow, and for a moment, everything felt exactly as it should. The traveler looked toward the evening sky. The first stars appeared above the mountains, bright, quiet, patient, just like the borrowed stars he had seen on that unforgettable night. He closed his eyes and allowed the peaceful mountain air to surround him. No worries, no hurry, no need to search. Only this moment, only this breath, only this quiet feeling of being exactly where he was meant to be. Deep within the forest, the wind continued moving through the pines, the snow continued falling gently, and somewhere in the endless mountains, a small lantern continued glowing, waiting, not for someone who was lost, but for someone who needed to remember that peace is always closer than we think, and sometimes the longest journeys lead us back home. The end. The traveler remained beneath the tall pine trees, long after the evening sky had turned deep blue. The mountain air felt cool against his face, yet he did not feel cold. The quiet warmth he carried within him was more than enough. Above, the stars slowly filled the sky, one by one, without hurry, as though the night itself wished to remind every wandering soul that beautiful things never need to rush. The traveler leaned back against the old pine. He listened, not for voices, not for footsteps, only for the gentle rhythm of the mountains, the whisper of the wind, the distant call of an owl, the soft rustle of snow falling from the branches. Each sound blended together like a quiet lullaby. His breathing became slower, calmer. With every peaceful breath, the worries of yesterday drifted farther away. The hopes of tomorrow no longer asked for his attention. There was only this gentle night, only this peaceful mountain, only this quiet moment. Far away, beyond the hills, a single lantern glowed softly within the darkness. Its tiny light flickered like a welcoming star. The traveler smiled. He no longer wondered whether it was the old cabin. He no longer needed to know. Some mysteries become even more beautiful when they remain mysteries. The moon climbed higher into the sky. Its silver light rested gently upon the snow. The forest shimmered quietly. Every branch, every stone, every quiet path looked peaceful beneath its soft glow. The traveler closed his eyes for a moment. He imagined the sound of the old kettle singing beside the fire, the crackle of burning wood, the gentle smile of the old woman. Those memories no longer belonged only to the past. They had become part of who he was. He opened his eyes once more. The stars continued shining above him. The mountains stood peacefully around him. And deep within his heart, there was nothing left to carry, nothing left to fear. Only gratitude, only peace. He rose slowly, brushed the fresh snow from his coat, and continued walking beneath the endless sky. His footsteps faded quietly into the mountain trail. The forest welcomed the silence once again. The wind whispered gently through the ancient pines. The stars watched over the sleeping earth, and the peaceful night continued exactly as it had always had. Calm, quiet, endless, as though it had been waiting just for you to close your eyes, take one slow, gentle breath, and drift peacefully into sleep. The night grew even quieter. The mountains seemed to breathe, slowly, gently, as though the whole world had settled into a peaceful dream. Above, the stars continued their silent journey across the endless sky. No sound disturbed their quiet light. No hurry guided their path. They simply shone, patiently, faithfully. The traveler walked without counting the miles. There was no destination left to reach, no race to finish. Each step became softer than the one before. Each breath carried the fresh scent of pine, snow, and the crisp mountain air. The forest seemed alive in the gentlest way. A quiet breeze brushed through the branches. Snowflakes drifted lazily toward the earth. Some settled upon the open snow. Others rested upon the evergreen trees. Everything moved with perfect calm. The traveler paused beside a small clearing. The moonlight covered the open snow like silver silk. He stood there for a long while, simply watching, simply breathing, simply allowing the peaceful silence to surround him. There was nothing to change, nothing to fix, nothing to understand. The mountains asked for nothing. The stars expected nothing. The quiet night offered only one simple gift: rest, The traveler smiled softly. He placed one hand over his heart. Its steady rhythm reminded him that peace had never been far away. Sometimes it only waited for the world to become quiet enough to be heard. He lifted his eyes toward the heavens one last time. The borrowed stars still shone above him, just as they always would, watching over every quiet cabin, every snowy forest, and every weary soul searching for a peaceful place to rest. The gentle wind carried one final whisper through the pines, so soft, it almost sounded like a lullaby. And with that peaceful sound surrounding him, the traveler continued onward, slowly, quietly, wrapped in the endless comfort of the mountain night. The trail became softer beneath his feet. Fresh snow covered every stone, every root, every forgotten footprint. Soon, even his own footsteps quietly disappeared behind him. The mountain accepted each step, then gently returned to silence. The traveler looked up. The moon rested peacefully above the snowy peaks. Its gentle light touched the forest without asking for anything in return. It simply gave, just as the little cabin had given warmth, just as the old woman had offered kindness, without expecting to be remembered, without asking to be repaid. A slow breath filled the traveler's lungs. The cold air felt wonderfully fresh. It carried the scent of pine needles, ancient cedar, and distant snow. Somewhere nearby, a small stream continued its endless journey beneath the frozen earth. Though hidden from sight, its quiet song could still be heard. The traveler listened. There was comfort in knowing that even unseen things could remain beautifully present, much like hope, much like peace. The forest grew still once again. The branches no longer swayed. The wind rested for a while. Even the falling snow seemed to pause, as though the whole mountain had settled into perfect rest. The traveler found a smooth stone beside the path. He sat quietly, not because he was tired, but because the night itself invited him to slow down. He closed his eyes. His breathing became gentle, slow, steady. Each peaceful breath carried away another small burden until there were none left. Only calm remained. Above him, the borrowed stars continued shining. Below them, the endless forest slept peacefully beneath its blanket of snow, and between the heavens and the earth, one quiet traveler rested for a little while, no longer searching, no longer wandering, simply belonging. After some time, he opened his eyes once more. The first hint of dawn had not yet arrived. The night still had many gentle moments left to share. So he stood slowly, pulled his coat a little closer, and continued along the peaceful mountain trail. His footsteps blended with the quiet rhythm of the sleeping world. One slow step, then another, until even the sound of walking became part of the silence itself. The mountains watched patiently, the forest listened quietly, and the stars, still glowing high above, continued lighting the path for every traveler who someday would discover that the greatest destination was never a place on a map, but a peaceful heart at rest beneath the endless sky. The traveler remained still for one final moment. The quiet forest surrounded him, just as it always had. The first light of dawn slowly touched the snowy peaks. A gentle golden glow spread across the mountains. The stars quietly faded into the morning sky. Their work was done. The traveler took one slow, peaceful breath, then another. He smiled, not because the journey was over, but because he finally understood. Home was never only a place, it was a feeling, one that could be carried wherever the heart chose to go. With calm steps, he continued along the mountain trail. His figure slowly disappeared into the soft morning mist. Soon, only the whispering pines remained, the quiet snow, the gentle wind, and somewhere, far beyond the forest, a small lantern still glowed beside a humble wooden cabin. Its warm light welcomed every weary soul, just as it always would. Perhaps one day, another traveler would find that peaceful path. Another tired heart would discover the comfort of a quiet fire, a warm cup of tea, and one unforgettable night beneath the borrowed stars above, the silent mountains. The end. So now, as the gentle wind whispers through the pines and the last stars fade into the morning, allow your own thoughts to become lighter. Let your breathing grow slow and peaceful. Feel every worry gently drift away. And may the same quiet peace that found the traveler find you as well. Good night. Sleep peacefully, and may your dreams be as gentle as the borrowed stars above the silent mountains. The end.